Welcome to the Zombie Antidote Podcast, where we help you become fully alive. Today we have our guest, Alex Kremer. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
Yes, so we're excited to be here. We're in New York City. Alex lives here in New York City, and we're here visiting. So we wanted to chat with him and dive into his journey. So thank you for being with us. Real quick, before we jump into some of the questions and some of the things I want to talk to him about, I want to give a little bit of background on you, but not all the secrets that you're going to talk about. So I've got a few points written down here. So Alex Kremer was born and raised in San Diego. And then at about 18 years old, you headed out University of Washington.
Go Dogs.
Yeah. So he was in Washington for a period. He was in Seattle. Stayed there and worked there for a little bit, spent some time in San Francisco, went back and forth. And then recently came to New York. So been here for about 2 years. The other aspect of where he's been is he initially, when you came out of school, you were at Microsoft. That was about a 5-year journey. And then you were at Outreach for about 5 years. That all accurate? Okay. And then the final point there is you recently departed from Outreach and went on to start Alluviance, which is a community for tech salespeople and leaders. And I want you to just give us, what are the 3 things that you're accomplishing in that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's always interesting when you hear somebody give you their background saying, oh yeah, I do all those things. So Alluviance, we are a tech sales community for sales professionals as well as sales leaders. And really, we're helping people do 3 different types of things. And this is something that I've been on a journey on through tech, through real estate, through many different types of avenues. Number one, hone your craft of a sales professional, right? The art and the craftsmanship of sales is something I really do love, whether it be in terms of how you do discovery, how you communicate with customers, how you close more deals. And I love that game right there. And the second thing is really becoming more self-connection, both with yourself as well as self-connection to others, as well as towards your vision. And number 3, be in community with other people who are on a similar type of journey. So we throw retreats, we do coaching, we have an online program. So many different things to elevate what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. That's Alluviance.
That is Alluviance.
Perfect. And so Alex owns and is the founder, creator of Alluviance. And that's part of what he's doing right now. There's some other things going on too, but it's kind of his main focus. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to put a plug here for you. You do have a podcast. I was on your podcast, but tell us, just give us two sentences about that.
Yeah, the podcast is called the Rising Leader Podcast. And essentially the whole goal is to bring forth the new wave of rising leadership to help people feel a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of connection, as well as to, oh, by the way, drive great results in the process of it. Yeah.
So if that's interesting to you, we'll make sure there's links so you can jump in, see all the many guests. Pretty cool experience, what you talk about on there. And it's just, it's different. It's similar to things in the past of like, hey, some of the content, some of the things that can help people succeed. But the difference comes in as like, the world's different now. And how, you mentioned rising leaders. It's like, how are they different today versus how they've been? So I love that. So go take a listen to that. It's phenomenal.
Check out the podcast of Kyle on my show.
Yeah. So we're here today specifically, right? The Zombie Antidote Podcast, where we help you become fully alive. So this essentially is a deep dive into journeys that individuals are having. And specifically when you're working with me, it's going to be some sort of a financial journey, very likely a real estate journey. Due to the multiple ways of income you can gain on real estate versus other asset classes. And so Alex was somebody that I've been able to work with for quite some time now. We've been friends, we've been peers, we've been colleagues, we've done a lot now together. And your journey's been beautiful. So we want to talk about that today.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So let's just get to some of the facts to get us out the door here. So your real estate journey, let's just break that down for everybody listening. Yep. When I met you, I believe you owned 2 pieces of property at the time. I might be accurate by that.
Yeah, back in. So I left college in 2014. I joined Microsoft in 2016 is when I bought my first duplex with one of my good buddies. His name is Matt.
Okay.
And that's up in Seattle. And this was a spot that we were like, hey, we know we want to get in the real estate game. We really have no idea what we are doing, but apparently you're supposed to buy multifamily types of units. And so we bought that. And that still have that today. And that is not only producing an absolute ton of cash flow for us. We've cash out refied on that a couple of times as well to really help us to invest into other places of our real estate journey.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, in 2019, I bought my second owner occupied property out in Seattle. I lived in for a couple of years now, rented out now that I'm in New York. So definitely got a smattering. And then, I think when you came into my real estate journey a little bit more intentionally, that's when it really started to say, oh, there's a whole game of terms of how we can leverage, how we can sort of diversify. Are we in the appreciation game? Are we in the cash flow game? And how do we really start to take advantage of what I already do own to buy more, as well as to gain some tax advantages as well. So
yes,
you've guided me on that in more ways than one. That is for sure.
No, that's awesome. So starting with, I met you had the twos. Technically, I think that's 3 doors because the duplex and the primary. Right now, where are we at? It's only been a couple years now.
Yeah.
Is it 8 doors at this point?
Yeah, I've got 1 in Boise that I own with my dad. And then I have 4 in Utah, 2 of which I own with my dad.
Yep.
And I think that's also been, one of the things that I, have loved about real estate is it's definitely a place for me to diversify. So I'm not just handing money over to my financial advisor. I'm not just buying shares within my own company or elsewhere. But it's a place that I am really owning my own destiny, so to speak. Yeah. And, my dad, he's in his late 70s now at this point. It is one of my dreams to help him become financially free and to retire. And so we started to go into business, start to invest in real estate in 3 different properties now. And that's just been, besides the fact that those are definitely, that's just producing income for us. And, really we're gaining more equity in it year over year. We're just doing something with my dad.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, Dad, we're investors and entrepreneurs. And
connection.
It was hilarious when we went into to create a shared checking account. I was like, Dad, what do you want to name this? Name our checking account. He's like, let's name it Empire because we're building an empire together. And it was such like just a moment. I was like, let's do this thing together. And so it's been fun.
Yeah. I'd love to hit on that more, but just like the energy and feeling of connecting and not just, over a TV show, but like, let's do something together. Let's go somewhere together.
Let's learn together too.
Yeah.
He didn't really know too much about the real estate game. He purchased homes in his past, but it wasn't as a investor, entrepreneurial type of mindset. And so you're learning from you through taking, the different types of courses that we've had. We've just both been, not only learning the lexicon, so to speak, of real estate, but we've also been stretched of like, hey, do we feel comfortable with this? Hey, we're about to, throw down a whole bunch of money on this investment. Like, have we fully identified if this is a good investment? How are we open to the risk of it not working out?
Right.
And that's just been really good to have a support system.
Yeah,
that.
Absolutely. I remember several of our classes we had. That was back in 2021, second half of 2021. And I remember Pops would come on with you as like a partner on the calls.
Yeah.
And we'd hang out, we'd teach him with the rest of the group, and it was awesome. So cool. Okay. One of the interesting points, we move on to the next question that I just want to bring up is, especially right now in the current marketplace, a lot of investments aren't penciling like they used to. Okay. Because rates are high. Prices have come down a little bit depending on your marketplace. Some of the big cities, maybe not. But essentially the math on units today is a lot more challenging. You mentioned the Seattle duplex is doing really well. It's cash flowing really well. At the time you got it, now you lived in it for a little bit, but at the time you got it, did it mathematically seem like some home run per se?
No, it did not.
Right.
And we ended up actually skipping the, what's it called when you go in, you do the, you check it out.
The due diligence?
Yeah, we skipped the due diligence in order to win the property. So there was definitely stuff like, ooh, I hope this is going to work out. And that slightly backfired on us a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a appreciation game. Back in 2016, Seattle was doing unbelievably well.
Yep.
we weren't going to be making a ton of money on the rental. And I didn't live in the unit, but my buddy, my co-owner Matt, lived in the unit with his wife. And so we were able to just kind of hedge some of the mortgage there. But, you know, we saw a massive boom, and it increased up to, I think, like 900,000. We bought it for 686. After a couple of years, and we cash out refied on that thing. And I was able to buy, you know, my other property in Seattle. He was able to buy a different property for him and his wife, and they moved out. We got another group of tenants in there, and then just, you know, the rental income in Seattle, you know, gradually went up, and we're probably cash flowing, I'd say about $1,000 a month.
On that spot. Yeah.
And sure, you have to take into account, like, it's an old house. Sure. You know, it was built in the 1940s, I think. I mean, we definitely had to do some work on that. Continuously having to do some work on it. Yeah. But we don't have a property manager on that like I do on my other ones. And I actually like that because I am being forced to learn plumbing. And being forced to learn the codes of Seattle for housing. And, you know, now starting to have my network of who am I bringing in as far as a handyman. Oh, we now we're a plumber. And so that's definitely been a journey of just understanding what is this like. I've taken those learnings as I started to build my portfolio, and especially it's allowed me to be more credible as I speak with my property managers when something is going on.
To know what's going on. Yeah. No, that's really cool. So just to clarify, you had the property, it actually enabled you both. You bought it together, the very first one. It enabled you both to actually go on. You bought a second residence with some of the equity out of the first.
Exactly.
He also did as well. And then just because I know your journey, you ended up further, I mean, this is several years later again, you ended up pulling equity again on this property to get 2 more of your current places, right?
So we did a cash out refi of the duplex. That allowed me to get my first primary residence, but my second property in Seattle 3 years later. Yep. And then on that one, after about 2 years, we pulled out the home equity line of credit, the HELOC on that. Yep. And that allowed me to purchase 2 of the properties that I have in Utah. And that right there was definitely a journey because I remember me talking to you because I couldn't find out how to find a HELOC on an investment property. It's very common to do that apparently on a primary residence. Yes. And I had this whole plan. I was like, okay, it's very easy. You just buy the spot, pull out a HELOC, and then when I called all these different spots, I was like, oh yeah, sorry, we don't actually do that on your property. And I remember talking to you and you're like, you just got to cold call a whole bunch of these different credit going. And I remember I pulled a list of probably 40 or so different credit unions within the state of Washington. And I called probably 25 of them and got 24 no's. Yeah. And I finally found the one that said, yes, we will do a home equity line of credit on an investment property. Yeah. And that enabled me to do it. And so it definitely wasn't as quick and easy, but it definitely taught me like, oh, I got to work at this. Yep. Like it wasn't just, you know, it's automatic, right? It all fits in together. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I was thankful for your guidance through that because
I think you rang me after like the 4th or 5th call and you're like, wait, am I doing this right? Yeah. Everybody's telling me no. And I'm like, no, keep going. Because I did the same thing at one point in time. And I think it was the 13th institution I got a hold of, like, yeah, we do that. And it's like the other people are like, no, we don't. And you almost don't think it exists. And it's weird because at least for me, I thought most banks and credit unions behave the same. Yeah. So you'd think if one bank has something, another bank would or would not, right? But it's weird that there are institutions that have different products. And so knowing where those are is actually pretty valuable. So follow along. We have that institution and there's some others depending on your location, what works for you. Also, you made a comment on you cashed out as the initial way to pull equity and then later you HELOC'd. Mm-hmm. Follow along as well. I'm just talking to the audience because there's a time when it makes sense to cash out and there's a time when it makes sense to HELOC, right? Depending on what's going on with rates. So what's cool to kind of wrap on that is the one duplex is essentially, I'm not only going to say 4 properties, right? Being 2 doors on the first, because your buddy also has his situation. So the one property is now 5. Yeah. Which is crazy to think about over the years. Mm-hmm. And when you looked at it initially, I don't think people were like, oh yeah, we're going to make $1,000 a month. We're going to turn this into 5 units. That's not the thinking. Yeah. Right. Is it possible? Yes. Right. And honestly, you guys kind of stumbled your way along and then kind of got help to finish through. But it does raise kind of the possibility of like, where might you be 7 years from now with your current portfolio?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think, it was definitely a risky feeling back in 2016. I've been in my career for 2 years. All of a sudden we each had to, fork over $75,000 for $140K down in payment on this duplex. And I remember going to the bank and getting ready to wire 75. And I was like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah.
And I'm so
first time
grateful. I remember I actually got a memory on Facebook the other day where it was me and Matt handshaking in front of the For Sold sign
on that deal
on back in 2016. Yeah. I looked at myself, I'm like, man, I was so proud of myself for doing that because it was nobody else, I was 24, 25 at that point. Nobody else I knew of that age was just like, I just got to get my first one in because I knew I had the foresight, get the first one in and I will somehow be able to leverage this moving forward. I don't know how. I didn't know what a HELOC even was. Yeah. I didn't know what a cash out refi was. I was like, I know that this is the right game. And, thankfully that, 3 years later really set a strong foundation to allow a lot more.
And it was fortunately also the time that performed, right? You didn't buy it in 2006 and right into 7, 8, 9. And so there is the ability to I wouldn't say you got a crystal ball and know what was going to happen, but you went in, you did something, and then it fortunately had time with you. And now that, and I talk about this a lot with investing, but father time is one of the best aspects of real estate. Mm-hmm. Because as you wait, as you let that marinate over time, it becomes, just a duplex into 5 units and $1,000 a month. And I don't think people get so fixated on the number at the entry, and they're not thinking about where things are at in 5 years, 10 years. And we know, both of us coming from tech, you still have a foot in tech. It's like, if you're a company operating for today versus a company that's operating 5 or 10 years from now, which company's ahead?
Yep.
Right. So it's very important to kind of think about that. We hinted on it a little bit, but I want to, because this always comes up with investors that I work with, is the emotion.
Yeah.
The emotion that comes up. You kind of hinted on it like that first time. You're like, wow, we're really dealing this, right? We're really going in on this. That moment in time, other moments in time, what would you say about the emotion that's come up and how you've navigated that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll share a couple of examples. First off, before I invested into real estate and really started doing it, I'd either purchase shares of my company that was investing, or I just hand it right over to my financial advisor.
Yeah.
And I felt good. I was like, I'm doing the right things, right? But there was this feeling I was lacking. I was like, why don't I have my hands on anything? I want to be able to say that I'm doing this and I'm taking ownership, and it's forcing me to be at my growth edge. And so just kind of taking my own, wealth and affluence into my own hands outside of my W-2, that was really exciting for me. I was just like, oh, I can actually do this. But then there's, the emotional. I remember when I was pulling the HELOC out and I was, really starting to say, okay, I'm going to pull the cash out refi. I'm really going to leverage this. What happens if I get laid off and I don't have any money to, we really had to think through it. And there was definitely okay, I am definitely at my edge right here. I don't feel super comfortable.
Yep.
And I can understand why many people are hesitant to get into real estate because hey, this is kind of shaking my foundation. Would I rather have $75,000 hypothetically in my checking account, which just makes me mentally feel good. I can buy stuff and I need to pay a big bill, I'm good.
Yep.
Or would I rather take that and buy that into a house that maybe that's not liquid, but I know it's there, but also that's causing me to live within a budget now.
Yep.
And that is an emotional game.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I suppose I have money, but when I look at my checking account, there's not as much money as I thought there should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's definitely a game. And, so thankful for you of I called you, and many times, whether it was on a yellow pad or on a whiteboard, we would map out, okay, this, right now we're going to do this one. 6 months from now, we're going to take out the HELOC and get these two.
Yep.
And then maybe a year from now, we're going to be able to leverage those and do this based on us doing a cost segregated depreciation.
Yep.
And getting my tax money back.
Yep.
And then also you always were well, where's your nest egg? Right? If all this fails, where are we going to?
Yep.
And so just mapping it out and the visualization right there really made me feel okay, there's a plan here. And we've thought through if, shit hits the fan. Like, what are we going to?
What do we do?
And, this past summer, I think everybody's aware that the tech world is going through a very tumultuous time.
Yeah.
And they had asked me to move out to New York and to open up our office out here. Built it out to 20 people at the office. It was doing great. But the company got hit with some pretty serious financial problems. And so myself, my leader's leader, all the way up to our chief revenue officer, we actually got laid off.
Yeah.
And there was that, I went in, I talked with HR, I got, a tiny bit of severance, not too much. And I was like, oh man, there's not going to be money coming in. Like, sure, I have money coming in my real estate, but wow, such a strong foundation that I've just been able to rely upon is no longer there.
Yep.
And you were one of the first people that I called. I was like, hey man, we kind of just did a whole bunch of stuff here, expecting for me to have a certain amount of revenue coming in from my W-2.
Yep.
Now it's not. How are we looking here?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to right away go get a W-2? Can I continue to see this thing through and just continue to invest? Can I start this, Alluviance, this big thing that I've been thinking about doing?
Yep.
And gratefully, we had done the plan and we had said like, hey, where's the nest egg? If you need to leverage that. And, so grateful that it's all, worked out. And, now Alluviance is doing well. And there's many other ways that I'm continuing to build wealth. But the real estate has really been if all hell breaks loose, at the end of the day, I could always sell my properties or one or two of them and get a good nest egg from that and take that, and I'll be able to live off that, and I'll be able to figure out from there.
Right.
And so just that knowledge has felt really, really good. But there's definitely been the elation of like, wow, we're crushing it. I've got my own life in my own hands, to the, oh my God, this was not planned. And also the, wow, I'm really at my edge here.
Yeah.
And just all of that has really helped me. And you talk about this a lot, of changing our identity to be more of an investor, of an entrepreneur. Yeah. I'm not just saying I'm a real estate guy. I'm an investor, and this is one of my investments that I'm choosing to do. And I would say also just the process of going through real estate also allowed me to gain the experience and knowledge of like, what would it look like if I started my own company?
Yeah.
What would it look like if I started my own podcast? I've got stuff to say about leadership because I've been doing stuff like this that is putting me on my edge.
Yeah.
So it's all been part of that journey.
Interesting. I want to come back to that. This idea of kind of further paths opening due to the uncomfortable edge you got in with real estate. The point I want to make before that, I just want to relate and kind of talk about the fact that when you kept getting there, right, there's this interesting kind of paradox that people come to when they're investing, is their emotion, like the feelings, the fear, everything is so high. One of the things I love, and this is why I call it paradox, is like sometimes I'm seeing 12 steps ahead of them. I always talk about that I'm like the war general and they're out there on the battlefield. And so I see where we need to go and what we're going to do. And they might have no idea at this point. Me and you have even had experience like that before, where you called me, you're like, I think you're like 3 years ahead of me right now. And I said, I am, but like, let's talk about today.
Yeah.
But it's just this element of like people, how do I say this? That with individuals, I often am able to draft and see a much bigger picture. And so in those moments that feel very overwhelming, I was able to support you. I'm able to support others. And then also kind of, if those feelings get too overwhelming, we pull back a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you're like, let's crush, right now's a good time, I'm feeling good, we push forward a little bit. I think the reality is the world, from what I've seen, at least because we went through 7, 8, 9 back in the 2000s, is individuals think debt is bad, leverage is bad, all of these things. And in that world, you and I, like if it was 07 today, we could both go to the bank right now and both get 5 loans, 0% down, let's go buy 5 properties each. You could do that back then. You can't even get remotely close to that.
I like that. We should go back to those times.
Oh man. And so what's interesting is like, I think people think that, if this is where it's possible for me to go to, that's an unsafe, that's a dangerous place. And the reality is it's a much, much safer place than where people were going back in 05, 06, 07, leading into that catastrophe. But then to add to that, we don't push to the edge with people. We could have pushed harder. We could have pushed further. We talked about HELOCs with you and leverage much earlier on in your journey, and we didn't take those steps because we weren't there yet, right? And so I think that's just something that I think is really cool to the journey here, and a lot of journeys that I get the opportunity to work with people on is just like honoring where they are and meeting them there.
Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, I want to tie back to your point of like, hey, I kind of went to my edge in real estate. So then there's this moment of being laid off, and you called me. I was one of the first people you called, and it was a great experience because although we were definitely oriented knowing X dollars was coming in per month via your W-2, your tech job, we were able to reposition. And it gave you the courage to say, yeah, you know what? I've been thinking about starting my thing. I kind of already am starting my thing. Now I'm going to go full bore. Uh-huh. And you had the assets in place, maybe not the cash, the raw cash, but it's like, look, I can go this long. I think we talked about you could go over a year without collecting a check. And then you start to talk about, and I could liquidate A, I could liquidate B if I had to, right? So that being said, just tell me a little bit more about this aspect of real estate and the edge you were pushed to created the courage to push into your own business, and further that today.
Yeah. I'll relate it to, you and I have been part of communities together. And one of the things that we used to do is breath work within that community. And breath work is, I do that a lot, both myself as well as I lead my team and at the retreats with that. And the whole purpose of breath work that we talk about is push yourself to your edge of feeling like you can't breathe. Like there's a certain part of Wim Hof when you're holding your breath and you're like, man, I'm about to pass out if I don't take a breath right here.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is to actually get comfortable at your edge.
Yep.
To say, I'm feeling really like, oh, really, I'm at my edge, and oh, I've been here before. Oh, I'm actually here very often. So it's not as scary, and you start to expand. You start to be able to gain more capacity through going through that. And I think just through, me wiring money in different places that are 5 digits, at times 6 digits. I'm like, oh, okay, this is not my first time doing this now, or my second, or my third.
Yeah.
Oh, I've put myself at risk of not having income, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, where am I going to do that? Okay, I'm okay with handling debt. And actually I'm using debt to my favor. Yeah. And how am I now playing this into my tax, game, not just this year, but next year, and then the next year.
Yep.
We've talked about doing, taking all 4 of my loans and putting them into a commercial loan.
Yep.
We've talked about, 1031 exchanging one of my properties in Utah to go get a more cash flowing one to support my father when it is time for him to move into retirement. Like all these different types of things. So it's not just me like in the mode saying like, oh God, this is terrifying. But more I'm starting to see the field. I'm like, oh, I got a little stuff going over here. Yeah, I could take over here and actually put that over here. I got this cool like company I'm starting. How does that actually play in the whole arena with it? Yep. And so now it's just, again, it really goes back to, I'm not just a real estate person. I'm not just a tech sales leader. I'm not just a founder of a company. I'm an investor. Yep. I'm an entrepreneur. And when I can start to have that field and also trust that, hey, it's okay if I don't know everything in real estate because I am you, right? And it's okay if I don't know everything about tech sales because I have great tech sales leaders who I look up to. Yeah. And it's okay if I don't know how to found a company completely because I have a badass, founders who are doing it with me. Yeah. And so it's just allowing me to say, it's okay. I'm at my edge. I've been here before. It's worked out. Actually, it's good. So I was actually just talking about this with one of our friends, Andrew Biggs. Yep. And one of the things that he talked about is that when you are feeling at your edge and pushing yourself is actually very conducive to putting you into a state of flow.
Flow state, yeah.
And when you are not at your edge, when you are just comfortable sitting on the beach in a vacation, nothing wrong with that. I love going on vacation, doing that. But when you're not feeling challenged, you're feeling comfortable, that actually causes you to not just be not at your flow state, but actually start to think a lot about the thoughts that you're thinking about and go into a dark place. At least that's my experience.
Yeah.
And so when I'm putting myself at my edge with this money, with my emotions, with starting companies, when I'm coming from a good energy with it, and also allowing myself to be scared with it and just resting in that, I am finding myself start I even kind of stand up straighter, like my chest gets open.
Posture changes.
Okay. Yeah. This is what badass investors and entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
They challenge themselves.
Yeah.
Not many people are willing to go there.
Yeah. It's interesting. And this goes a little bit kind of off script and we're getting closer on time, but, it's interesting because I think a lot of people might look at like mine and my wife's journey and say, oh, they were lucky. Oh, they timed it. Like the timing was lucky, right? The reality is there is always going to be elements you can't control, right? If you've read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, you understand, you don't have control of everything. And how do you become an outlier? Take advantage of things that are in front of you. I think that's what we did. It's what we're doing with you. It's what you're doing. But it's this idea, I think a lot of people just say, oh, it's luck. When it's like, you're literally talking about, I had to learn to get on that edge. I had to learn to sit in the uncomfortable space. Now I'm not freaking out. I haven't stopped breathing, in the breath metaphor, but it's like, I want to take a breath, but I stay there and I hold the pattern. And that's so cool because, you reminded me, I kind of forgot this, but looking back at the whole time, and you're mentioning your dad and those pieces, how we've talked about how some of those Utah townhomes aren't forever investments. We definitely will roll those over into the Midwest and go heavy into maybe a 4-plex or an 8-plex, depending on the numbers. But that is the moment that we accelerated the value of money through the appreciation of Utah, but then went into the cash flow elsewhere to then force the retirement. So if we would have gone cash flow out of the gate, we wouldn't have been able to maybe get him there as soon.
He might not be getting as much cash flow right now, but we know,
but the
retirement, thought about that 2-3 years from now, he's going to be making a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. There's strategy there. I love that because it's like, there's so much intentionality. And then in the times that are difficult, I love it because that moment you called me, you're kind of frazzled. You're like, hey, I'm being let go. What do we do? We kind of walk through it and it's like, there's a plan. We're good. And I think this is something so interesting that, and this is not to toot my own horn. This is just general. And I think you would highly agree with this. I always talk about with people, join a community, get mentorship, get an ally. Even the best coaches have coaches, right? And so people are like, oh, I can just learn it. And it's like, well, you can, but when you make that phone call, when you get laid off, you're liquidating.
Yep.
You're not calling and saying, hey, and I just bring the energy down. We got this. Let's reposition. Let's do this thing. And so find people, right? In real estate, people have me. You lead in the tech community, tech sales leaders. If you're in tech sales, if you're a leader, if you're in anywhere in that space, you've got a community to help nurture people, right? It just, I think it's one of the highest value places you can put your money. And if people follow my content, I've actually recommended they put their money into those things before they buy real estate, before they start to take on the identity of an investor. They need to hone their craft. You were literally mentioned that's part of your, your mission statement of Alluviance is honing the craft of a sales leader in the tech space. So I love this. I didn't know we were going to kind of get here in the conversation, but I just love this aspect of like, everybody gets uncomfortable in life. Your success is not built off luck. It's built off of leaning into that uncomfortability. And I can say for me, like 100%, that is where we were made, right? The final question was just along those lines, like how has real estate empowered your journey? And I think we've talked about that. So the fun bonus question we'll wrap up with here is because this is the Zombie Antidote Podcast.
Great name, by the way.
And ultimately, it's like we're helping people become fully alive, right? Become liberated financially, There's also some emotional elements to it to really take next steps in your life to go where your highest potential is. And I think finances, in my opinion, is a constrictor. And we want it to be a liberator. We want to not only liberate, we want it to empower. Right? So the question is, Alex Kremer, you're here with us today. What makes you come most alive?
A good question right there.
Does not have to be real estate related.
I feel most alive when I am part of something that is bigger than just myself. When it's not about me, when it's not just about, am I making a lot of money? Am I getting my needs met? But it is for a cause, for a mission that other people, yourself very much included, are working towards.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's so much of, what we, not just really work hard to embody. And by no means am I perfect, right? I still struggle with this every single day, but there's this, like, we're part of a movement here that is causing us and therefore creating a transmission to other people to say, there's a purpose with this. If there's a meaningful impact that I'm trying to bring to this world. And also I am trying to, take this torch that I'm holding here, and I want to be able to pass this torch on to future generations and to other people to allow something good to come. Am I down to get rich? Absolutely. Like, let's do that. But I don't want rich to be the purpose. I want my mission to be the purpose. And then, oh, by the way, the byproduct of that is I'm going to become wealthy. And then hopefully, if I want to buy something, I will.
Yeah.
But I don't need to think about it so much. And that just gets me really inspired of do something bigger than just yourself and find other people who are down to be part of that.
Do that. I love that. The aliveness comes from doing something bigger than yourself. So, well, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, brother.
I appreciate it. Take care, everybody. We'll see ya.